Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the Rauf Show. You're listening to Mukhtar, and in studio today I'm joined by Brother Muhsin as well as Brother Tahir. For our WhatsApp line is open. Should anybody like to contact us on WhatsApp, the number as broadcasted is 060-904-1056. Let me repeat, 060-904-1056. So it's the first time that I'm back since the start of Ramadan, and I'd like to wish everybody Eid Mubarak, even though I'm a few days late. And also, I hope everybody had a good Eid and there were no issues at home with regards to drug abuse or anything of that sort. But, this morning I was talking to my father on the way from Fajr Namaz, and we were saying the topic we should discuss today is denial. It's an age-old topic. It's something that we discuss over and over again. And I'm sure our listeners out there must be thinking to themselves, geez, don't these guys have anything else to speak about except denial, denial, and denial? And the thing is, if we look at the word denial itself and in the effect of denial in the life of a recovery or an addict, and the effect of denial in the life of a caregiver of a user as well as the life of a recovering addict, we understand how important the topic of denial actually is. Because the first thing in denial is not knowing that there's a problem, and then the second one is knowing there's a problem and doing nothing about it. And time and time again, whenever we speak of things like denial and so on, it always comes back down to the blame on the user. This person doesn't realize how bad they are or how bad they're behaving and so on and so forth. But as caregivers, it's something to think about, and most of our listeners, I'm assuming, are caregivers. If you think about the fact that when your loved one was initially on some sort of narcotic or substance or whatever it was, somewhere along the line, somebody would have told you your loved one isn't looking right. Something is not right with this person. Have them checked, whether it be substance abuse or whatever the case is. And 9 times out of 10, I can almost guarantee the next statement is going to come out my mouth. Every caregiver would have said, who are you to say this about my child or my spouse or my whoever it is? And this is something that we need to overcome from a caregiver point of view. If someone says that your child or your loved one or whoever it is experimenting or misbehaving or doing something that's not normal, we should investigate this. Because by us not investigating this as caregivers, it simply means that we are overlooking the wrongs of our children, and rather we would like to find a fault in the person that's trying to help us. So that's also a form of denial that we need to think about, while we're talking about this topic today. So we've got Brother Tahir here, who's been with Rauf for many, many years. I think him and I actually grew up together for a long period of time, and he's going to give us a bit about his story. He's going to tell us essentially how long he's been at Rauf, what age he actually came into Rauf, and how many times denial played a role and a factor in his recovery and his mistakes. So, Brother Tahir, without much ado.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
It's been a very, very long journey, in recovery, ups and downs and full of losses. And, I think, I came into Rauf when I think I was at 17 years old. I was 17 years old. And at that point of my life, I was a full-blown drug addict. Meaning I had all the personality of a drug addict: manipulation, lying, stealing. I think at that point also I was on the streets also. So when I came into Rauf in the beginning, I can remember we were still in Spingo, in Spingo days, the old center, and being there. A lot of recoveries from all over, Cape Town, Joburg, meeting different guys and things like that. And, the program wasn't like how it is now. We didn't have any support group.
That was about 20-something years ago, right?
Yes, over 20 years ago. Now I'll be, inshallah, 41 this year, so I think it was over 23 years, 23 years ago. And we didn't have any support group programs and things, just our normal programs that we used to sit in at the center. And the first time, I think if I can remember, if I'm not mistaken, I was there for 18 months. in Rauf. And I can remember that, you know, my grandfather passed away, and I used that as an opportunity to manipulate my family. You know, being in recovery at that time, for me, it was like, you know, I'm not smoking drugs now. You know, I'm clean for a long period of time. So, you know, I thought that I'll never go back. You know, not keeping in mind that I still had those, you know, this drug addict behavior, the way I used to think, you know, my mentality and things like that. And, you know, so I went home for the funeral, and then I stayed back for 3 days, and I was supposed to come back, and then I manipulated my parents, and then I ended up staying for a little bit extra days, and then Ibrahim, I remember he phoned, and he asked me, what's the story like, you know, and then I came back. But I think that the seed was already planted in my head at that time that, you know what, I had enough of Rauf, you know, and I want to move.
If you don't mind me asking, Maf, how long from the time that you first came in till that point?
It was a plus minus about 18 months.
So almost a year and a half.
Yes, it was about 18 months that I was in the center. And, you know, as I said that, I thought I was over the drug problem, you know. And so when I went home, you know, my mom was the one that, you know, she was like, you know, she had a soft spot. You know,
as all moms.
Yes, she had a soft spot. So you know, I manipulated her a lot, you know, throughout this whole process of recovery. And she always gave in to me, I think, because of being a single parent. You know, she lived like, you know, a life like, you know, she maybe, I'm doing all this here because, you know, she wasn't the best of mom. She always took blame, you know, for all my wrongs, you know, and I fed on that, you know, all my throughout my whole recovery. And you know, she gave in, and then I left Rauf, you know, and then after I came out of Rauf, you know, staying at home for a couple of weeks, and I found a job, part-time job. I was working, and eventually, you know, I went back, because the lifestyle that I was living was still normal, like a drug addict. I was, you know, communicating with guys that you used to use. I used to go out at nights and things like that. And eventually I got sucked in, you know. And each time that I relapsed, I relapsed for multiple of time, you know, because I always had this mindset that, you know what, when it comes to denial, the aspect of denial, it only relates to drugs. It doesn't relate, but
in recovery.
Yes, but for when you look at denial, it's a very broad aspect. You know, don't only relate to drugs; it relate to every aspect in life. You know, and as long as you do not sort out that, you know, that bad character or that personality, that whole, you know, in recovery they say we need to make a holistic change.
Yeah.
You know, in every aspect, you know, as time goes, you are bound to go back and smoke. So that's what I did all the years, you know, giving in to, you know, to that. And I had multiple relapse. And the sad thing was, every time that I relapsed, you know, my situation became more worse and worse and worse. You know?
If you don't mind me asking, Tahir, at this point when you've gone home now and you've manipulated your mom, you know, one of the things in denial is not knowing that there's a problem, but not doing anything about it. But the next one is also not understanding the seriousness of
the problem. Yes.
So at that point, did you realize that your drug problem was as serious as it actually was?
No. I never, you know, I've been on the streets, right? But not completely, like, you know, like everybody, because I still had family, I still had everything, you know. I should just go like missing for 1-2 days because I wanted to use, you know. And so the seriousness of my problem wasn't like, I didn't think that it was like, you know, so bad, you know. So as time went on, you know, coming into recovery, relapsing all the time, my support structure got smaller and smaller and
more
smaller.
People walked away.
Yes, more people walked away. More people got tired of my manipulation and lying. You know, a lot of people gave up. I think at the end, the only person that stood by me was my mom.
Yeah.
You know, was my mom. She used to stress a lot. And I think, you know, when I came back now in 2017 or 2018, if I'm not mistaken, alhamdulillah.
So this was the second time you came back?
This was the last time now I came into Rauf. You know, 2017, 2018. I've lost everything. In the process of relapsing and things like that, I've been married, I got a beautiful daughter, now she's about 13, 14, she's a teenager. I lost everything, my marriage, and I finished off totally on the streets. Now I was living on the streets. You can so-call, they use this term, a para.
Yeah.
I was a para on the streets. And, that was, my you can say my turning point in life, where one day I just woke up. I can remember it was raining at that night, and I'm sleeping and I'm wet and I'm sleeping under the plastic, and I was in a pathetic condition, and I just said to myself, where did you bring yourself? You had so many chances, so many opportunities people has given you, and this is your condition today, and I can remember, I came back into Rauf, and then, Ibrahim Bhai was also reaching that point of, letting go, because, so many chances he has given me, to come back in and out all the time. So I think, he was almost there, reaching that point to say, well, hey, I had enough of this, so, it's better you give somebody else a chance who really wants to give it up. But then, alhamdulillah, Allah put it in his heart to, to accept me back. And this time around, looking at all the experiences that I had previously in recovery, the thoughts that I used to entertain, and the choices that I used to make, I get even up till today to being clean for just over 7 years now. You still get these thoughts come in and out, but now because of my experiences that I had previously, it makes me be like you did the same thing previously, or you thought in a certain way, and
similar
manner, and this was the consequences of you thinking in this way or doing certain things. So automatically it brings you back, in line. But the thing was that for me, denial. Denial is something that I don't look at denial only due to being only on a drug aspect of it. I look at it in a whole aspect of life, whether it be my character, whether it be the people that I'm around, or the choices that I make, or whatever the case may be. It's a very deep thing for me, and what I came to understand, in recovery, being unfortunately the hard way, the hard way in life, is that as long as you have that small percentage of denial within you, the chances of you relapsing is very, very great. That is the reason why now I hold on to to the rope of Rauf very, very tight, and I don't make any excuse why I shouldn't be part of this program. And I think my family also, they learned the hard way. Now they they're part of the program, they're more educated, they know what to do, or whatever the case may be. So it makes things much more easier. I think when you come out of this this denial phase, everything's you look at the bigger picture basically in life. Why certain things, I'm clean now for a period of time, and I still don't have a phone. I still don't carry cash. I still, don't go alone, and I still follow all the, and sometimes now, you get recoveries, these thoughts come in your mind, the people that come after you, and then you sit and think, hey, this guy, he got a cell phone, but he's clean he's clean for such a short period of time. You get this denial thought that pop in and out, but then, you basically, you rationalize, you think that, everybody is not the same. Every recovery is not the same. Sometimes people, they adapt more faster to the program, and and some people it takes more longer to adapt to the program and understand the program. And for me, it was a very, very long process. You're talking over 20 years in and out. It was a very long process.
In that 20-year time, Taid, I don't know if you can count the number of years, right?
Yeah.
But in that 20-year period of time that you've been in and out of Rauf, how much of that time was actual clean time?
I think the only time that I was clean, when I thought about this year, the only time that I was clean in Rauf.
So every time you left,
Right.
you relapsed.
So every time I left, I don't think I stayed clean for a month. You know, for a month. And when you talk about, Ibrahim Bhai used to always keep me for a long period of time because of the mindset that I had. I had always had an attitude, I had arrogance. I never used to listen. I used to always fight the system. When it came to a certain time period in my recovery, that 2-year period was my downfall period, where I noticed that whenever I reached the 2-year mark period, then this bad behavior, this attitude, this arrogance comes in, and I'm looking for a loophole to walk out of this program. I used to create, I used to create problems, supervision in the center, and I used to have problem with certain rules and things like that, where then I used to just leave, walk out, or run away, things like that, walk out of the situation. And when I used to do that, I used to always tell myself, this time around I'll stay clean, I got this thing under control. But I always went back.
And by you saying that, it goes back to the number 3 point of denial.
Yes.
Knowing there's a problem, but not understanding how serious the problem is. So if I were to ask, obviously for the benefit of our listeners out there today, in the 20-year period of time, or 23-year period of time, how many of those years were spent in denial? I know you said you clean now for about 7 years, right?
Yes.
So this is like your longest period of clean time.
Yes.
So in that 20-year period of time, do you know, or maybe you can give us a rough idea as to how many of those 20 years were spent in denial of the fact that you have a serious
I think if common sense will tell you the fact that I went out and relapsed, and I never embraced the program. So I think if you look at it, it's the whole time period. You know what I'm saying? Because if you really think about it, if I wasn't in denial, I wouldn't have been making, irrational decisions or choices and things like that,
Is it safe to maybe say to our listeners out there that your denial period was more or less approximately 13 years of your life, where you understood a little bit, you came while you were there, you had to follow the rules, you went out, you slipped back into denial and then relapse, and the cycle repeated itself.
Yes, it cycled, and I think if you think about it, some type of person can be in denial. For me, if I look at myself, you're in denial, but you're doing all the right things because you are forced to do the right thing, because you got people watching over you all the time. You must know when you're in the center, when you're in the center, there's no space for you to do, because the moment you do something wrong, there's consequences. So you are forced, like Sheikh Ibrahim will always say that some of us are clean because we got a sword hanging over our heads. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And very few people are clean because of they see the bigger picture, they want to stay clean. So a lot of, if I look back and at my journey into recovery, I can safely say that I stayed clean because of being in Rauf, and that sword was hanging over my head. You know what I'm saying? And because of being in that situation, you must remember something. If a person that is out of denial, he will embrace every rule, everything in recovery, and whenever he finds any challenges or problems and situations, he will always find the correct way or correct method to come out of the situation. And a person that is in denial, he'll always run away from his problem. And I did this for a long period of time. I always ran away from my problems. Whenever I had challenges, I had situations or confrontations, I always ran away from my problems. And something that I came to know, that you can't run away from yourself. Because the most, we talk about 3 Ps, we talk about all this, the biggest playmate is yourself. Yeah. The biggest monster that you can associate yourself with is yourself, is because you grew up with this thing from a young age. Denial, it's a very, as we said, it's a very broad aspect when it comes to recovery. It doesn't only relate to drug addiction, to drugs itself. A lot of us, we think that we clean for a certain period of time, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, and now we can go out there in the world and just live happily ever after. A lot of things come to play when it comes to to denial, and I think that is where I failed. A lot of times when it came to my character, when it came to my attitude, my personality, the way I used to see things, the choices that I used to make, fail at that,
Jazakallah for those words, Tahir. We're going to stop for a quick ad break, and when we get back, inshallah, we'll continue the topic of denial.
Follow us on Instagram at Radio Al Ansar.
WhatsApp us now on 060 904 1056.
With 49 years of experience in the motoring industry, Metro Car Sales has been proudly serving you since 1976. Need a great deal on your next car? We've got you covered. We offer in-house finance arranged in 1 hour. So, what are you waiting for? Call us now on 033 3942 595. Visit us today at number 1 Boshoff Street, Pietermaritzburg. You can also check out our amazing deals online at www.metrocars.co.za. Metro Car Sales, your number 1 dealer in wheels.
اللهم إنك ترى ما نزل بنا في غزة من الأحوال يا ذا الجلال والعزة يا ذا الجبروت والعزة اللهم أعز أهل غزة اللهم فرج عن أهل غزة اللهم فرح أهل غزة اللهم انصر أهل غزة اللهم داوي جريحهم اللهم اشف مريضهم اللهم اقبل شهيدهم اللهم ارحم ميتهم اللهم كفكف جراحاتهم وبرد آلامهم اللهم واجعل لهم وللمسلمين فرجا قريبا يا الله اللهم فرج عنا وعن المسلمين في كل مكان اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين واخذل الشرك والمشركين ودمر أعداء الدين يا رب العالمين سبحانك سبحانك ترى الظالمين فتمهلهم حتى يظنوا أنك تهملهم وتبتلي الصالحين في الدنيا حتى يستيئسوا فإن استيئسوا أتيتهم بنصرهم اللهم إنك تعلم أن جراحات المسلمين كثيرة وآلامهم كثيرة في كل مكان وفي كل زمان اللهم فانصرنا على أعدائنا يا الله اللهم فثبت أقدامنا يا الله.
Elegant, stylish and affordable. Al Noor kurtas are designed to make you feel confident and stylish with intricate embroidery, vibrant colors and comfortable fabrics. These kurtas are sure to become your go-to choice for everyday wear and special occasions alike. Visit the Al Ansar bookshop at 207 West Road, Overport, or call them on 031 208 1601. Al Ansar Shop, your one-stop Islamic shop.
Your perfect companion. Radio Al Ansar.
Do you know someone with a drug problem? Join me, Ibrahim Dawood, every Sunday 1 to 2 p.m. on our fight against drug abuse, where we will discuss the scourge of substance abuse in our communities and listen to the hard-hitting points from real-life experiences and true motivators.
It's happening more and more each day. These drugs making my friends crazy. I'm laying it down.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh. Welcome back to the Rauf Show. You're listening to Mukhtar. And in studio today, I'm joined by Brother Tahir as well as Brother Muhsin. Our topic of discussion is denial. But before we get on with the topic, just a reminder for anyone that wants to maybe contact us via WhatsApp. You can do so. The line is open. The number is 060 904 1056. Let me repeat, 060 904 1056. So before the ad, Brother Tahir was telling us about his time in recovery. And the takeaways from this are the fact that he's been in recovery in and out of Rauf for the last, or the better part of approximately 21, 22 years, right? And in that time, he's been clean for the longest period is 7 years, right? In succession. So the last 7 years up from today, going back, is the longest he's been clean. And in that time, he's been in denial for approximately 13 to 14 years. So the reason I'm highlighting these points from what Tahir was mentioning is because a lot of people out there believe that a quick fix solution will be able to assist and sort this problem out. You know, drug addiction is easily solved and resolved with one pill or one diagnosis or, one injection or whatever the case may be. And this conversation and this topic opens up that whole scenario, because you're sitting with a person that has issues, psychological, mental, whatever issues they may be, and those issues actually drive them into this addictive personality. So the thing is, if you ask a person that's been doing drugs, or if you look at the behavior of a person that's been doing drugs for 10 years, for example, this person's bad behavior didn't start the minute they became a full-blown addict. This person's bad behavior started months, weeks, and years before then. So if you're looking at a person now, if you think that a 21-day program or a 3-month program will be able to resolve 11, 12, 15 years worth of bad behavior, we're going to be very sadly mistaken, because what we will find is that the person will go into a rehab, get detoxified, and follow whatever process they need to follow, and then when they leave that program or that center or that rehab, whatever it may be called, it's not going to be very long before that person relapses. And one of the reasons that we have found for this is because, for number one, the user hasn't come out of denial. So they're still in denial of the fact that the problem is very, very serious. There's no justification, there's no minimizing that this problem is gone. It's there, we have to accept it, and this is how it is. That's one of the flaws that a user may experience, one of the negative impacts that a user may experience if put into a short-term program. The second aspect of denial is obviously the caregiver. The caregivers are now also a very vital cog in this machine of recovery, because if a caregiver isn't brought out of denial themselves, then they will not understand that a user is always going to be in recovery, or a person that's in recovery will continue to be in recovery for the rest of their lives, or until, for example, in the case of a parent looking after a child, when that child gets married, then that child's spouse now needs to be empowered to be able to assist and maintain the recovery of that child. Because obviously, as parents get older, they do hand over caregiving to somebody else. Most of the time, it's going to be a spouse. Now, if a caregiver doesn't understand that denial is also going to impact them, because you can say to the person that your child is an addict, and the caregiver will say to you, no, my child is not an addict. That is denial 101. Don't know the child is doing drugs. Don't understand the seriousness of the child's problem, because what would a child say to their parent if they get caught? No, daddy, or no, mommy, I'm just smoking Zol. Or it was just once. And then we do a drug test and we find that there's a whole grocery list of drugs that this person has been taking, and it's taking a long time to get out the system because they've been using so much of it. So that's something else that the caregiver needs to be aware of. And then going back to the user, now in the form of recovery. Recoveries also have to be a way of denial, because if a recovery isn't a way of denial, it's very easy for recovery to slip back into denial. I mean, as Brother Tahir mentioned, sometimes you'll come into recovery because it's the only option you've got. You've got a sword hanging over your head. If you don't come into recovery, if you don't sort your life out, something's going to go drastically wrong. But then you'll find certain people will do recovery because they really want to come clean. But either of those scenarios will play out into a possibility that there could be denial creeping in recovery. How does denial come into recovery? You may be clean for 4, 5, 6 years, 2 years, 1 year, whatever the amount of time may be, and then you may start to forget that you had a drug problem, because your behavior will try to depict a person that never had a drug problem. Then you may start to forget how serious your problem was. Then you may start to forget how much of work you put into now reaching this point of recovery. Then you'll forget how much of justification you put into your recovery, or into your addiction, your life of addiction. You'll forget the amount of justification you gave to yourself and your loved ones with regards to this thing. And this is how denial will creep back into the life of a recovery. So this is the reason why caregivers need to be on top of their game. The users need to be on top of the game, and the recoveries need to be on top of the game, because if they let one aspect of it fall, the whole house of cards collapses. So that's how recovery is, that's how recovery works. And hoping this conversation now, sometimes we say this thing so often, we try and find different ways to try and explain it. Hopefully it sounds a little bit more palatable. Hopefully it makes a bit more sense to our listeners out there. And hopefully people start to pay attention to this thing. Because recovery is not just, take an option between a red pill and a blue pill. Take this pill and you come clean, take this pill and you'll forever be a drug addict. No, recovery is a lot of hard work. So I'm going to call upon Brother Muhsin, who's going to give us a bit about his situation, how his state of denial was, or how bad his state of denial was when he first came into the center and into the program. And also Now that he's clean for a number of years, and his situation is a little bit more different to Tahir's situation, because he's been discharged, he's working, married, child. How difficult or easy it is in his current situation to actually go back into denial? Brother Muksi?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I think that the topic of denial is also, we're running this topic at a very crucial time, coming straight out of Ramadan, after Eid. And a lot of times, the people, especially the Muslim Ummah, or the Muslims that are using drugs, we go through that period of time in Ramadan where we become the most practicing.
Charged,
we're spiritually charged. We're practicing. We can stay clean. And the moment Eid Namaz starts, Shaitan is like waiting, and so are we. And we fall back straight into those denial ways, or even into addiction a lot of times. But for me, I think I had one up on Shaitan, because in Ramadan also I used to use. Being a Hafiz, used to use during Ramadan. And that shows that the biggest problem wasn't even Shaitan, it was myself, my nafs. And I think that one of the biggest fuels of our nafs is that denial. More so because Allah Ta'ala says, if you have a mustard seed of pride in you, then you won't enter Jannah. And as Tahir said, if you have like even a small ounce of denial in you, your recovery becomes very difficult. Why so difficult is because it's always going to pop its ugly face up. It's always going to surface here, there, everywhere, no matter how long clean you are. And that's why they always teach us in Rauf that it's going to be there. You can get out of denial, but it will come back. Now you're going to have the tools to deal with it, to identify, to rectify it. So with my situation, I started recovery also about 8-9 years ago. And when I came in, you both of you know, it was very bad. And I think Uncle Ibrahim always calls me one of the top denials that he's ever seen, because at that stage in my life, I was on a full scholarship, studying, being a Hafiz, and I just lost my dad the same month. So my denial factors were out of this world. It was off the charts. Because first of all, my justification was, I just lost my father. You all don't know how I feel. I'm dealing with my situation the way I am. Secondly, I failed to see the fact that I was failing in life, failing as a son, as a brother, as a student, as a Hafiz, all of these things. Because drugs became such an integral part of my life that it became me. So I was doing everything that I thought was correct. Like, they always say, Uncle Ibrahim always tells us, like an ostrich we are. We put our heads in the ground and think we are hiding, but our, for lack of better words, backsides are out for all of us to see, basically, what's going on. So that was me, basically. And I had the exact same situation that you spoke about, where a family member pointed out that something is wrong with me. And that family member's son was also in Rauf many, many years ago. And at first, I think because my mother was in such a heavy state of grief, she just listened to what the person, or heard what the person had to say, but we didn't take it seriously, because at that stage in time, my drug addiction wasn't the focus. The focus was my dad passing. When I'm saying close time, I mean like he passed away in June. I think end of June I was in Rauf. And how I remember exactly, look, I have very, very faint memories of my addiction days, but I remember exactly the day. I remember exactly what I was studying, and I remember exactly what I told my mother for me to get to that first meeting at Rauf. I was studying for a subject called Geological Evolution of South Africa. I had failed it once already. If I did not pass this module, I would not have finished my degree, and I was not passing that module because I was goofed. And I just put my pen down, and I told my mother, I can't do this. I cannot do this because I can't think anymore. And for those who know me and those who listen to me on the radio before, you'll know that my drug of choice that I used, I'm not going to say what it was, but it was something that I used in order to help me study. but it had become recreational in the process.
Just for those listeners out there, it is also a prescription drug, and it's something that a lot of our youth, up until today, will still interfere and play with.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the students, scholars will say, take this to help you to focus,
to study,
and be careful with this one, because a lot of practitioners may actually provide it.
Yeah.
Without proper diagnosis.
That's exactly it. And yeah, so then my reason for firstly coming into Rauf was because then I thought, now this will be my scapegoat. I can, get a letter, send it to the university, maybe they can give me some sort of concession. But I went into recovery, I went into the program with a family friend. And the first day, he said, don't worry, I'm going to be here, I'll sort everything out, whatever. But he left me. And I was very upset. And there was lots of swear words and lots of fighting that was exchanged on that day. And I think that went on for about 3-4 weeks before I finally was allowed to come into the day program. And because it was halfway through the year, I thought I'd be in Rauf until the end of the year and go back to campus, so I could finish off my degree and give them that letter saying, you know what, I was concession, blah, 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 grief, whatnot. So I had all of these things in my head, my own plans, my own plots and plans. And I was basically riding the wave. I knew, you can attest that I knew the program inside out, word for word, but nothing was being practiced at all, to such an extent where I didn't even follow the 3 C's and 3 P's. And my mum, who was also in denial at this stage, never even enforced the rules. I had my phone, I had everything that I needed or that I wanted, but I never followed the program. So I thought, okay, right, things are going well now. I'm clean for 3, 4, 5 months now. I don't need that thing anymore. I can just go to campus, finish my degree, and everything will be fine. So that went on for about 7 months, and the time when I was supposed to start campus, which was in February, that was the time I found myself in the farm. And so there were different plans for me, and again, kicking, screaming, fighting, acting like an absolute child, because I didn't get what I wanted, and my plans weren't going, to the way I wanted it to. And it was just basically me knowing I had a problem and not doing anything about it, me minimizing my problem, me shifting blame. Those are all the steps of denial that we learn in Rauf, but there's it in the flesh. That was me right there and then. And in the beginning, I didn't even know that I had a problem, because I'm someone that overdosed just a year before that, but I still didn't feel like it was an issue, because in my mind everything was justified because I was doing it to study. So that went along. I spent about 9 or 10 months in the farm, and Uncle Ibrahim was very, very he made the program very difficult for me, because he knew how my mind worked. I was sharp, so I could use my mouth. I could sweet talk, manipulate anyone and everyone that I thought I could, And so he made me he put me in ICU a little bit, intensive care, and I spent a long time on the farm.
And by the way, ICU doesn't mean actual ICU.
Not ICU as in the hospital, intensive care. like he kept an extra eye on me, basically. And so in the farm, I had another justification in my mind. How can I be on the farm? My father just died. I got 2 Lachi bros, still 2 younger brothers still in campus.
My mom's alone.
Gee?
That line you told me, my mom is alone. I need to look after her.
Yeah, exactly. How I need to look after them. I'm sitting over here. What am I doing? Not being able to see that I'm putting myself right so that I can be a benefit for them in the future, because we're so nearsighted. We don't see anything in the beginning of our recovery. So then I stayed for about, in total now, almost 2 years in the center, and finally I decided, okay, you know what? Let me start getting into this program. Now
so if I could just ask, so in that 2-year period of time, how long did it take you to identify that you had denial in you before you started working on it?
I'd say during the time I was an outpatient, the whole time. During the time I was a day patient, the whole time. And 3 to 4 months into the farm, I was.
So you're looking at about just around a year.
More than a year.
Year and a half, maybe.
Yeah, about 14 months or so, because I remember the first 3 months of my life in the farm, I used to put myself to sleep with thoughts of going jolling. That was my pacifier.
So that was your carrot dangling in front of you.
That's what I used to use to go and sleep, because I was so restless, and I used to actually play out nights out in my mind to calm me down, to put me to bed. There was no spirituality, nothing in me at that time. But I finally decided, I came to the center to read one day, and I saw my brother, my youngest brother. He's gone big, got his license, looking good. My other bro is working nicely, everything's. My mother is perfectly fine. They looked better off without me than with me there. So then I said, hey, if they are so fine without me, let me rather put myself right so I can fit into that family again. And I'd say the second half of my stay at the farm, I started really working on myself. I stopped putting a time on my recovery, because that is a very big denial aspect. I think, when you think that you can do things on your terms, no, that's not correct, because you had no management in your life in recovery. So you have to somewhat surrender to the help that is being given. So at that stage, I did that. And I spent about a year or so in the center doing awarenesses. Then I went back to campus. And
so, if I could just ask, what was your total time spent in Rauf before you got discharged?
I spent 2.5 to 3 years.
So of that 2.5 to 3 years, at least 50% of it was spent
in denial.
Before you came out.
100%.
So another, obviously, balance of time for you to actually get discharged. Then once you got discharged, right? Okay, subhanallah, you got your degree and so on, all that sorted out. Now, I'm just rushing you because of time as well. So obviously now you clean for a number of years. I think it's 6 years, right? That you clean out, discharged. 9 years discharged.
Oh, 6 years.
7 years. Well, 6-7 years discharged, but 9 years in totality that you've been drug free. So now that you clean for 9 years and you've been out of the center. When I say out of the center, I mean not as an inpatient. Out of the center, working, obviously married. You've got a newborn baby as well. How do you feel now about denial and slipping back into denial as a recovery?
As a recovery, I like what Tahir said about it being such a broader aspect than just drug addiction. When it comes to my drug addiction, the drug itself, I'm very, very, very. I take a lot of cognizance in the fact that I have so much to lose. But sometimes denial, it sneaks its way in. If it can, it's like an entity by itself. If it can see that this person is working hard on staying away from drugs, it will sneak its way into his character, or to his anger, or to his frustration, or dealing with things. And I find that that's more of an issue with me. Like sometimes you get frustrated, sometimes life is giving you a bit of a hiding, and you act out in the wrong ways, and it's no justification for it, but at that time you don't control it. And we have those kind of programs where you deal about moment of madness, but then that's where the denial aspect comes in, because you don't deal with it in the correct ways. You can say, yes, I'm free from the drug, but you're acting out as an addict would act. So those are the kinds of challenges that I still have. Not saying that I can never relapse on drugs, never, because these things can lead to that. But I can say, shukr alhamdulillah, in the years that I have been with Rauf, I've kept very strong with them, close to them. So whenever there is that kind of issue and I feel like I can't handle it, you'll get a phone call, or your father will get a phone call. And I feel like the denial aspect is so strong, and I don't think we can ever completely rid ourselves of it, because I think it's a challenge, an everyday challenge, or an every so often challenge. And that's why I think our introspection, which is what the tool we use to keep denial at bay, is so important. And one of the things that I use fairly recently, but I find to be working, is taking stock. Because taking stock of your day is introspection. And if you are able to be mature enough in your recovery, then you can identify where you went wrong, and you'll see that denial stepped in over there. And sometimes you use this word and you think that it's so like using it over and over and over again. But that's the fact, is that people, addicts firstly, we're talking about addicts here, but also people at large, it's so easily, we so easily succumb to these things. So yeah, that's me basically when it comes to denial. My challenge right now is knowing that I have a problem, like with regards to frustration and acting out and stuff, but I wasn't doing anything about it. Now we mustn't reach a stage where you can't do anything about it and then sit and hold your head.
Just to elaborate a bit on the point that Muhsin meant about introspection. So introspection itself as a tool doesn't work, because introspection has to be, once you've identified your flaw, you have to rectify. So if you're not rectifying the flaw that you've identified, there's no correction being done, and as a result you end up sitting in the same spot, having the same problem, essentially behaving like a vehicle whose tires are spinning on the spot. So, denial has many aspects. And also, touching back on the caregiver role of denial, it's very simple and very easy for caregivers to also fall into this trap, because remember, the life of a user, an actual addict, a user, a person in active addiction, affects the lives of approximately 72 people. Now, 72 people are not attending the program for each and every user out there. In fact, if you look at 9 times out of 10, most of our caregivers coming in are either going to be one single parent or two, mom and dad. Very rarely would you find siblings coming along. Very rarely would you find children coming along. Very rarely would you find spouses coming along, unless that's the only choice that they have. But what this means is that the only people empowered are the people that are attending the program. And then what this then opens up for the user or the recovery is the fact that if nobody's attending this program for me, apart from the people that brought me in initially, how then would they be able to catch me if I start to manipulate them, because they don't know? So it's very important for especially when the users or users become recoveries, and the recoveries start to move on with their lives, when it comes to new spouses, when it comes to all of these other extended family members that come into the program. It's very important for them to actually be aware of this. Some people, we've had comments on the WhatsApp line a few months back actually, where people say you're branding them by letting them use Rauf t-shirts and so on and so forth. And some people are of the opinion that you shouldn't tell everybody that you're a recovering addict. So I will leave this in the mind and the heart of the recovery and the user. If you feel you want to disclose it, that's up to you. But in my personal opinion, the more people you tell it to, the more often you remind yourself. And the more often you remind yourself, the more often you are aware of the fact that you could potentially fall into some sort of trap because you are a recovering addict. And this is not a way to punish yourself, but rather a way to ensure that you maintain the route of recovery. We are at the end of our show. I'd like to